ill. Question had already been answered, but can you share a little bit about the different pockets of pickleball in the community? And for example, I know there's folks at Ocean View and the vibe is a little bit different than at the Racket Center. And so what is the vision for shared use or like the inclusive nature of this proposal?
It's our hope that it would be a facility for all, that it would be actually be melded together with the two programs so that actually, when you think about it, the numbers would be much higher. So we would hope that all would come together, that the program that's run at OV could also be run in this new facility. When you think about it, there's 4 courts at the Racket Center and 4 courts at OV, and they're full. They're to capacity. So if we actually brought them together under one roof, it would actually make things more simple. In fact, I just supported someone to join the Powell Racket Center, and he'd been playing at OV for a short period of time, and he's going, okay, so I do what, when, where, how? What app do I use? How does this happen? If we were all under one roof, it actually could make it a much simpler access for all.
Yeah, thank you to the Chair. Ms. Young, I just want to thank you for bringing this forward in such a timely manner. I know you must have been working very hard to put this together in the time you span that you've done so.
Just a little.
Yes. So this is very exciting for our community, and we spoke last time. Councillor Isaacson wasn't here, but this is a big announcement today on behalf of the schools of BC.
Mm-hmm.
More and more youth will be playing this and growing up with this sport. We know the growing nature of the activity because of the professional ranks that are now in operation, and we know how valuable, and I can't stress enough, how valuable this is to our senior population here in our lovely community of Powell River. So I think this is something that's long overdue to bring everybody together in this front and utilize not only the spaces that you're currently using, but to expand, because we know there's a great need. So saying that, I'm just wondering, last time we were tasked with asking you to provide a letter and ask of the lease of the land. So I'm going to refer to staff for a further update on where staff thinks we should go from here. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. CEO.
Through the chair, you have an opportunity tonight to give direction to staff. One of the key things I think we discussed with Ms. Young, while pickleball has identified a particular spot at the complex, there's flexibility and openness to other considerations and locations. One of the things for staff is obviously doing something like this is staff time that takes away from other priorities of council, but this is your opportunity to determine your priorities for us. So one of the first things usually with a request like this, whether it's pickleball or some other use of city lands, is an assessment of what's the feasibility, what's the implications, what are the different opportunities for the city to own and operate a facility versus a partnership with another entity. And so I think the first step would be for council to direct staff to invest time and resources into a feasibility. Are there other options we haven't considered? We have looked, while we do have a lot of city properties, not all are well suited. And I think the Pickleball Association has reviewed the list of properties that we have and looked at synergies. So I think the first step for council is to consider, do you want to reallocate or allocate staff time and resources to a feasibility study so we can come back, work collaboratively with the partnership group, in this case pickleball, and maybe, you know, it could even be, I know there's some existing partnership with the school district. You know, what are some opportunities we can look at? And we would need some investment into time to come back to you with what does the cost of a new facility look like? Are there existing buildings that could be repurposed? There's a range of different factors over different timeframes. I do know from my previous role in the NIMO that sometimes partnerships with the school district can provide opportunities with underutilized space, and that could be interim solutions prior to something bigger like a more capital investment. So you can do two at the same time, but look at interims. So I guess my aspect to council is that you direct us, knowing that we do have finite staffing and resources. So if this is a priority for community and council, we just pivot. Yeah, so that's, and that means even looking at things like once we have a sense of what the options and the costs are, coming back to you with what that looks like, how that's fit into future budgets, and also time and investment, seeking grants that are municipal and possibly assisting with grants that are supporting nonprofit only kind of grants, that kind of thing. Thanks.
I've got, I'll continue down the line. I'll come back to you. So Councillor Dowd and Councillor Elliott.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in and make a motion that council refer this letter from the pickleball players to staff for a report on the request in the letter, including the property mentioned and any other suitable properties, and bring that back to council.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I also had crafted a motion that I thought might do. But as I was sitting here listening to our CAO, I thought it might be prudent to maybe have the motion be addressed in a very near future meeting so that we can have time to consider questions about staff priority and where they stand and be well thought, have everybody, including staff, able to answer questions people might have around that. Okay, so what does that mean to all the other things that are on list and how things are impacted before we decide on this question? Because I don't believe that we have enough information about projects that could be impacted by making this a staff priority or how that might fit in with our workload in order to vote on this today. I want to vote on a motion and consider it, and I think it might be better served if we did so at the next committee of the whole. So my preference would be to postpone this motion or make it a notice of motion of some type so that it comes up in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, to clarify, since the motion's already on the floor, the option that Councillor Elliott's suggesting would be a deferral to a future meeting?
Or postpone to 2 weeks?
Through the chair, you can postpone and give a specific date to reconsider it, whereupon you can get more information from staff. And if I may, one other thing that came up in our meeting with Ms. Young is specifically related to the complex. Staff are looking at what's an overall plan for all the complex uses and weaving that into the conversation. This is something that would have been woven into the initiation of the official community plan that's been delayed, but there is plans to start looking at that in the 2025-2026 with council's purview, specific to the complex way. But I just want to add that there are also other interim options. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that same conversation could be had if George Dowd's motion was accepted on the floor.
Councillor Dowd and Councillor Elliott.
So just want to suggest that I don't think I'm going to change my mind in the next 2 weeks about whether it's a good idea to ask staff to come back with us at some time with a report on the feasibility of granting your request. Looking at this piece of property, telling us about the considerations that council will have to take into effect. There's nothing in the motion about a priority, this taking priority against anything else. Gives perfect flexibility to staff to make their decisions on what they think priorities should be and come back to council and talk about that. I'm ready to make a decision on it right now. I think we've got a crowd of people in the audience that would like to see us make a decision on whether we want to move ahead or not. And I would like to just pass the motion and get on with it. eventually, it could either be a short report or a long report. It will come back to council before any particular action is taken, and the CAO will do what the CAO always does and prioritize the work that is there on the schedule. So I'd like to pass this rather than delaying it, waiting to do it in another 2 weeks when all the same people are going to be here.
Thank you. It's not necessary. I think to the CAO's point is whether it's decided today, decided in 2 weeks, or is one part of it. But when staff has to do it, they still have to bump something else down the priority list in order to do that report, depending on how high a level of priority council wishes to make any other new report, whether it's this report or any other report that we bring to the table. So Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Southcott.
Thank you for all of that. So the motion's on the floor. It will get considered either today or if it's postponed in 2 weeks. I would put forward amendments to the motion for timings if we were going to go forward with the motion, because this one is vague and doesn't say anything about when it would come back. And so in order to do that, I would want information from staff about what they thought around the timings and what it costs us in the bigger picture. So I just want to make motions that create actions and we know what those actions are going to cost us. That's all. And so it isn't an attempt to delay the project, but rather to have reports that come back that we can action rather than, or just a report to tell us we need to do another report. So my concern is not about trying to delay things, but rather to be a little more effective. Thanks.
Councillor Southcott.
Thanks, Chair. I support this motion. I have the same concern as Councillor Elliott. However, I believe I heard implicitly, at least in what the CAO last said, and I agree with, as I said, Councillor Doubt. And I trust staff to judge how quickly and how to fit this in. So I don't feel that a motion to postpone is necessary. It's not on the floor yet anyway. And I trust staff's ability to prioritize. That's all I have to say, but that's the basis for my support for this motion now. Thank you.
Councillor Palm, then Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, to the Chair. Again, Ms. Young, I thank you for bringing this forward in such a timely and speedy fashion, and I'd like to support you in your endeavor. I see nothing wrong with motion that's on the floor from Councillor Doubt, as there is no timeline in that motion. So hopefully going to be looked at and brought back in a timely fashion, and we can get some more information prior to move forward or in another direction. So I wholly support the motion and thank all the citizens for coming out today. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Palm. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support this motion for three reasons. One, it is in alignment with our strategic priorities around providing facilities for recreation that define our community and make it where people want to live, etc. Another reason is it says there's no date reference. I think if it had a date, I would actually have a challenge with that because staff have a variety of priorities, and some of those priorities including hiring people to do this work. And so in passing this motion, I want to be clear, this may not come back for a while, but it's on the docket. And the other thing that I like about this is it's specific to the letter and city properties. I'm not interested in a report on partnerships with the school district. If there's other opportunities for pickleball in the community, I think the Pickleball Association can lead those, but specifically around the use of the property mentioned and city properties, so specific to what could be the city's role and what would the options, the implications and feasibility of doing that are. And so for those reasons, I support the motion.
I'll share a couple thoughts and then we'll take the vote. I'm a little torn on this one. I said before and had a chance to join Miss Young and take my daughter to the racket center a few weeks ago and play for the first time. And as those who have seen me at this table for 2 years, I'm a big supporter of recreation in general. It's been a big part of my life in many ways for the greater part of my adult career. And so in that sense, I support almost all things recreation. My one big concern is to where we are as a community without having a full plan for recreation as a whole. To do piecemeal work, I'm concerned in that level, because while that piece of land is available now, we are also awaiting a report on our pool, and we don't know where the status of that pool is and whether we can keep the pool where it is or whether, God forbid, a new pool might need to be built. And as soon as one facility goes up, that means that that land can't be used for something else. But once we get that pool report, for example, that could lead to a domino of other things happening information-wise that could open up at least the beginning stages of a recreation plan. So that's my one concern now. So it's not that I'm opposed to the growth of pickleball. I'd love to see it happen. I just think this might be slightly premature on its own without having a plan that encompasses everything. So for me right now, I can't support the motion as it stands, but I definitely want to see something happen over time. So it looks like I've addressed everyone, so I will call the motion. All in favor? And I guess I'm the only one opposed. So that one carries. So I guess we will see when that report comes back and take it from there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And before I bring up our next delegation, I forgot a couple of things. As those who have been paying attention to the Weather Network know, that we are expecting some sort of craziness tonight. So I will give a second actually for the gallery to clear a little bit.
To hear that.
So they're all pickleball.
It's a big pickleball though.
That's my name.
Want to beat the weather home.
Yeah.
See how early it gets.
Is the happiest crowd?
Yeah, no kidding. I love it, eh?
Be that for a change.
Feel like there's a joke somewhere about how many pickleballers leave a room at the same time or something, but I can't think of one right now. Anyways, with the weather warning that we have in front of us, I did want to let everyone know, and for those that might be watching at home, we might encounter some technical glitches with the weather today. Hopefully our power stays. We never know what's going to happen with the power in our community here. So just be prepared. The recording is going to happen either way, and even if the live stream happens to have some issues, the recording will go up later, provided that we still have power. And for those of you that are at home, please be safe, batten down the hatches, and keep your flying objects out of the way of the wind if you can, to keep the community safe today. So, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So the next delegation is from the Therapeutic Riding Organization, which I am a board member. And since they are requesting some decisions from council, I'm going to declare conflict.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Thank you. While Councillor Elliott's leaving, I'll invite Sara Archer from the Powell River Therapeutic Riding Association to come up to the front.
Hello, and thank you. Sadly, we now have an empty room because that was a room full of potential volunteers I was going to try to solicit. So I'm quite sad about that. I had my pitch ready to go.
Next time we'll put you first.
Yeah, right. So I am here today to talk about a redistribution of a grant that was already allocated towards Powell River Therapeutic Riding from the Community Forest Reserve Fund. We were granted $27,000 for a overhaul of our arena. The footing was quite bad, and we were seeing a lot of our horses become lame. And as you know, well, as you may or may not know, therapeutic riding is an integral part of the community. Having operated for over 32 years as a not-for-profit, we are a team of dedicated staff and volunteers, and we're always doing our best. And we serve the school board, and we are constantly getting better. Since I've been there the past year, I've taken over as a general manager, and we have a really bright future. And I'm just trying to triage. And in that triage, it became clear to me that with this grant money, we were given the money to buy a new groomer that would groom the arena. So every day our riders come in and they ride in the arena, and our volunteers walk in it. So the footing has to be really quite stable for the health of our horses and the safety of our volunteers. So with our grant that we were given, the first step was to buy a groomer, which we did buy this past summer. I have the receipts here. It came in at about $7,600 with the groomer and the shipping, which was on target with our budget that we had proposed initially. And what I did see was this groomer really solved a lot of our problems, having the right tool for the right job, essentially. So I was just meeting with the Better Bobcat Services, who had provided the quote, and I was asking them about another footing issue we had at our facility, and they provided me with a quote. So the remainder of the job under the grant that we currently have, there was still $17,000 that was going to be set aside to take out the arena footing and put new footing in. But as I'd mentioned, the groomer's really doing a great job, and it's come clear that that's not a necessity. I mean, it needs to be addressed, but in terms of triaging, what I have found recently is that our outdoor paddocks are quite unsafe and unsanitary due to drainage issues. So the horses' shelters, the water is kind of pooling in, and the horses are standing in muck and dirt, and it really needs to be addressed urgently. Actually, as of now, our horses aren't going into the outdoor paddocks at all because it's not safe. It's not safe for our staff, and it's not safe for our horses. It will cause health issues and a number of things. So what needs to be done, and what I'm here to ask the council today, is to redistribute the remaining funds that were allocated towards us from fixing the arena footing to fixing the footing out in the paddocks. Now, I have a quote here. The estimated cost is $15,000, so it is less, which is, you know, to be considered. But what needs to be done is we need to take out the contaminated footing, specifically under the shelters. And then we need to put in the proper compacting soils and foundation and drainage so that we don't have this issue again, and so that our horses can enjoy their outdoor facilities. Yeah, I mean, it's quite an urgent matter, and we're doing our best to keep the horses happy and to keep them exercised, but having that outdoor space for them is really important for everyone. That's it. Thank you for your consideration. And
okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions?
There's a lineup apparently already. So and just to summarize for the committee, and if I understood correctly, you've spent about a third or so of the grant that you received, and have about 2/3, give or take, that didn't get spent, that was allocated for one capital project, but you want to allocate it to a different capital project is basically the conversation.
Yes, that's it. That's correct.
All right. Well, I will start it with Councillor Isaacson, then Southcott, and then Doe.
I was prepared to make the recommended motion, so if there are questions, I'll leave that for other members.
Southcott, is there a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Have you consulted with the Community Forest Board? Their function over the years has been decisions of this nature. I personally can't imagine that they wouldn't see it the same way as you do. Essentially, it's a very similar problem, just outside, not inside. But I'm wondering, have you consulted with them?
Well, because the grant had already been given to us, I was instructed that it's council who now has to have the final say and approval on that.
CEO's got the mic, but I believe it's because we already did the paperwork in the spring that says XYZ, that we have to change the paperwork to match the current proposal, right?
Yes, and through the chair, both Ms. Matthews and Ms. Denniston have reviewed the criteria, and really it's now for council to approve the change in scope. So as far as staff is concerned, it's consistent as long as you approve. Thank you.
Councillor Dope?
Yeah, so I had the same question that Councillor Southcott has. A different answer than I expected from the CAO. But I just have a personal suggestion when you're bringing things to council, because when I'm trying to make a decision, all I see is that you were coming here as a delegation and there's a motion to use some money for something else. I don't have your original application. I don't have your suggestions or information on the alternative projects. And that would make it easier for me to make up my mind on what I think is appropriate. But, you know, here we are, we don't have it. It's just a suggestion for the future that having that information ahead of time so that council members could read it and think about it and have questions ready would make it easier to say yes. But, you know, that's just a statement, actually, not a question.
Okay, yeah.
But, you know, and then we'll go on. I'll see what happens next.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, through Chair. First of all, thank you for coming forward here today and explaining the situation to us. We all know that therapeutic riding is, as you said, a long time activity in this community and serves so many people in a great manner. So thank you for that. From what I think I heard our CAO just explain, and I just want to be correct, in terms of what you just stated, was that both of our, a couple of our staff members in the finance department have reviewed this and are okay with council making the decision in this regard.
Through the chair, that's correct. And I do want to say, with respect to Councillor Doubt's comments, in an ideal world, we would have the bandwidth to pivot and do a report. We're down a few staff, including absent, a key one. So with the delegation request, we thought, you know, that would, but you can direct us to provide those details to you. And if you would give us a grace of a few weeks, we can do that. But we did understand that the Therapeutic Riding Association did need to pivot fairly quickly. Thank you.
Okay, over to Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I will move that staff be directed to amend the scope of the July 30th, 2024 grant contract number 2240-2022-44 with the Therapeutic Riding Association to permit funds to be used for paddock and arena improvement needs as required.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Any other questions? All right, Councillor Dow.
Don't have a question.
Okay.
This is debate. Okay. So I'm not comfortable in changing the scope of a community forest grant application without talking to the Community Forest Board about it. My historical perspective, having seen quite a few applications to projects come through the Community Forest Board to later be approved on by council, any changes to those projects have been discussed by the Community Forest Board, and 99% of the time they've been approved. It'll be a new thing for council to make those decisions without consulting the Community Forest Board. And this is not a suggestion that your application isn't appropriate or that I don't think it should be approved in the long run, but I'm uncomfortable in going ahead with it without approval or discussion with the Community Forest Board.
Through the chair, and I'll just look to you for confirmation, our understanding as staff is the conversation did happen with Mr. Hempel. He was in agreement, but redirected through to this process because ultimately it's council approves the granting of funds. So I'm looking to you for confirmation of that. I've got that from other staff members. So with all due respect, that conversation has been had with Mr. Hempel on behalf of the Community Forest Board. Thank you.
Alrighty, so I will call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. So
Thank you very much for your time today.
congrats and good luck on the new renos.
Thank you.
Moving along.
We want another counselor to come back.
Yes, she's coming.
Not a conflict of interest anymore.
Long walk from the hall. As Councillor Elliott's getting settled, I believe we have Chief Jerkley on the line for 6.1, our traffic bylaw amendment.
Through the chair, I'm going to briefly introduce, and then we have Chief Drakely to help answer any questions. So before you have a report for decision, and this is essentially about aligning our traffic bylaw with other measures that you have already adopted through the parking bylaw amendment earlier this year. And essentially the report is there for you to make a decision that helps staff align some inconsistencies with voluntary payment wording, which makes it very hard to enforce parking, and also aligning the financial amounts that you approved with the parking bylaw with this bylaw. And so staff are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
I'll make the motion if nobody has any questions. I move that members of the committee refer the first 3 readings of City of Powell River Traffic Bylaw 931-1978, Amendment Bylaw 2770-2024 to a future council meeting.
Second by Councillor Elliott. Any other comments for debate? Okay, Councillor Dow.
Yeah, just it's kind of a side comment here, as I've been getting letters lately, and I think everybody on council has been getting letters and hearing from people who would like speed limits addressed in other places. And this is a bylaw where speed limits are addressed on page 3 or page 12 of the bylaw. And there's not very many comments in there about speed limits, but there are a few. And I just had the thought that it wouldn't be very hard to change some of those speed limits to reduce side streets to 40 kilometers an hour or 30 kilometers an hour. And we've had a lot of people ask us over the years to do that. More people than have asked us to raise the parking fees. But I think it's possible to change the speed limit, and I'm sorry for introducing another whole topic to the discussion.
CAO.
Through Chair to Councillor Dowd and all of you, please be advised that in your upcoming budget deliberations, we'll be funding through the engineering infrastructure to do a road network analysis, which will involve a comprehensive look at our speed zones, our priority areas, not only for operation of roads through speed limits, but also how we prioritize our upgrade and standards for different roads. So it's a pretty key thing. It's would have been done as part of our official community plan review, but we're moving forward with asking for you for that consideration. And this would involve a thorough review of speed limits and other elements that are contained in documents like this. I also wanted to observe that we are aware that there may be other bylaws that we need to upgrade related to parking, and that comprehensive review as we pick up bandwidth in a few areas with staff will happen in the future. So Chief Drakely has observed that there are more things we need to look at. So we're just trying to fix at least the enforcement side of things with this one. This is a pretty key one, and we are aware that we need to do more. Thank you.
No other comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Takes us over to 6.2, community engagement reports. Looking to see from Councillor Isaacson. Are you able to start us off?
Oh, sure. Had a lovely morning on Remembrance Day with another number of other councillors. And as you laid the wreath, Councillor Almeida, I'm sure you'll have more to say there, but it was a really lovely gathering of the community. Thank you. And then I attended the Sunshine Coast Tourism Strategic Planning Workshop and a networking session. I left before their AGM started. But I would say there's probably about 25 people, and they had some key questions specific to the group's opinions on increase in sports tourism, or interest in film tourism, and interest in business events and retreats. And then there's a fourth one that I'm forgetting right now. So there were some small group conversations about that, and they're hosting another strategic planning session on the Lower Coast, but all of this is meant to feed into their strategic plan as an organization. So not a strategic plan for tourism, but for what they as an organization will focus on. So it was great to spend time with that group. And then after that went to a chamber networking event at UBrew, and heard some speakers talk about accounting in a very animated way. So that was nice. And it was very handy timing because that was the day that the power was out in some areas of town. And so it was nice to have a warm place to go where there was food and hot water and I could charge my devices. And then I attended the Finding a Path Forward, BC's homelessness crisis event that was put on by LIFT. So LIFT is starting a community education series. This was the first one where they had a leader from the Pacifica housing organization that runs a number of facilities on the island. They have hundreds of housing from supported to market based, and just talking about potential solutions, challenges that they've seen, what works, what doesn't. And it was a really great group interested in learning more. So that was really lovely. I spent the entire day in Townside on Saturday, attending art sales. There was the Coast Mountain Fest going on. There was the holiday crawl going on at Townside. There was the Lund Craft Market out at the Italian Hall. There was the Dwight Hall version. It ended at trivia at the brewery related to mountains. So it was just like a full day. I literally was there from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then that was a lot of fun. And then lastly, the ad hoc, I keep saying it as, describing it as ad hoc, but the group of people interested in participating in a housing roundtable that have connections to getting people housed. We met yesterday, and everyone provided updates. And one of the updates that I provided them, which staff had shared in case we got questions from the public, was when we might see the adoption vote related to the land use for the proposal for supportive housing. And staff told us, based on the interagency work, it likely won't come to us until the new year. So I shared that information with that group. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Councillor Southcott.
Thanks, Chair. Remembrance Day, something I've participated in since I was a kid. Did this time too. The lift event that Councillor Isaacson mentioned, I found that very informative, and the presenter had a really broad perspective. It was really refreshing. And this morning, I spent an hour with a third-year class, geography class of UBC, who is interested in decarbonization in rural communities. Specifically, the connection was made through the Columbia Institute that I've been connected to for a number of years. They are involved in lots of things, both environmental, social, the whole spectrum of transformation in our society. So that was an honor and a little bit humbling. There were 70 young people in this third-year class, and they had some really great questions. So I was trying to stay concise, but I really enjoyed it. And I was very proud to represent our community, because we have done a lot, actually, over the years that I've sat on council and before as well. We have been respected, and I think that is quite possibly the reason why I was asked to represent small communities and ours in particular. And that's my engagement report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. Councillor Dope.
Yeah, it's been a busy little while. I participated in the Remembrance Day. I went down there, as I have for, I think, about 65 years. And I've been to a lot of them. And there were a lot of people. It seems to me there's more people attending in Powell River and other places for these ceremonies that commemorate the service to the country that has been put in by so many people. There was a fly past too, you know, a civilian aircraft flying over the parade and over the ceremony at the cenotaph. So it was good to go there and to see all the people there. Went to a Skaboom concert at the Carlson Club and watched a person who was in the audience here get win a prize to all of the Carlson Club music events for the entire year. I would have liked to win that myself, but one of our audience members here did win it, and it was a great night there. I went to participate in a video conference with BC Nature Trust. And there was a collection of councillors from different cities and regional districts throughout the province. We're talking about land trusts. We've got to pass the motion to have a committee put together to consider a land trust in Powell River for the old golf course land. So networked with quite a bunch of people and different organizations. And the goal of all these organizations in common is to try to create conservancy trusts for 30% of the territory in all the provinces across the country, you know, over a period of time. We're working towards that, not anywhere close to it yet, but they're talking about contributions in various ways that are being explored by many municipalities to conserve some of the property within their boundaries. So that was very interesting. Also went to a fundraiser for the Music Academy on Saturday night, which was a good bunch of performers there. We had a choir, we had Walter Martella playing his accordion and his trumpet and singing, and a lot of good things went on, and saw lots of people there. So it's been a busy couple of weeks, so I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure I crossed paths with a bunch of councillors in other different places too.
Thank you. Councillor Dope. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I too attended Remembrance Day ceremonies at Brooks High School and our community one down at the Cenotaph. I had lunch at the Legion with lots of folks there. I was honored to be seated at the table with Tom and John McGregor, who were visiting our community to lay the wreath for John McGregor, who is Canada's most decorated veteran and rests with us at the Cranberry Cemetery, correct. So I got to meet those folks and talk to them over that luncheon, and that was really nice. We discussed history and sort of where we all come from, and I received an email from Tommy McGregor the next day telling me he really enjoyed his lunch and thanking me for being there and talking with him. And I brought that up at the chamber meeting, which I went to on November 12th, and got to hear a really nice story from former Mayor Dave Formosa about how folks here in Powell River helped to get John McGregor's Victoria Cross and medals repatriated from an auction house in Britain because they had gotten lost somehow along the line and then were going to be sold in an auction. And so I believe some folks here in the room might know a little bit about that story as well. So I didn't know that we had key people in our community help that family repatriate those medals, and it's an amazing story. I wish we had that story to go along with John McGregor's pictures and things, but all nice things I learned about the history in affiliation with Remembrance Day and the McGregor family, and and the conversation I had. At the chamber meeting, we also talked about downtown beautification, concerns about the tourism Powell River delays in the contract, which I understand are coming up on an agenda very shortly, so we'll have all those questions answered. Reiterated their concerns about increased security and community patrols, crime prevention in our community, and some other topics that we'll keep under our hat for the moment. I also met with our director here of Vancouver Coastal Health, Michelle Hanna, to talk about the upcoming meetings that we may be having with BC Housing and VCH, and I was able to gather information from her perspective. I asked her about the parking for hospitals, and she said it is VCH's job to sort of plan for parking and figure that out. And she didn't have it in the budget at this point to expand the parking, and she thought it might be an excellent topic to get on top of. But she wasn't. It wasn't on her radar just yet. So I flagged it and hope that that gets through the channels as well. So that was my community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. And of course, John McGregor's, who our City Hall is named after as well. So, Councillor Palm.
Yes, through the chair, yeah, the Major McGregor was hanging on the wall when I was first elected time ago. And Mayor Ellsgaard was instrumental in bringing those medals home. So got to give credit where it's due. Just a couple of quick items. One is last Tuesday, November 12th, I had the pleasure of attending in place of the mayor, the Community Forest AGM. And that was well attended, very informative. And from after the business was conducted that day, we took a drive out to the Duck Lake area to see a recent logging of an area out in Duck Lake, and taking down a lot of cedar, and which is still valuable in the market in this day and age. So it was just a real eye opener to see the contractors and the fine job that they have done in our watershed on how neat that logging show was, with waterways protected, logs stacked up along the roadways that have been built, trails in the area protected. It was just a really great show of the fine work that our Community Forest Board does in connection with those contractors that are taking trees out of our watershed. So I just wanted to make council aware that if you get the chance, I would ask if there's going to be another tour in the future that you take part, because it really shows you the fine work that our community forest is doing in our community. Secondly, the Harbor Advisory Committee meeting. Our next meeting will be December 4th, Wednesday, in a couple of weeks' time. And I just want to remind staff that probably next week they should put out asks for any advisory committee members to submit agenda items for that meeting. We've already got a few, and they'll be coming in fast and furious, no doubt. We always have a long agenda, and I really appreciate the fine work that our committee members are doing in that regard. So that will be happening 6:30 in the upper committee room at City Hall that evening, December 4th. Public's welcome to attend. It's an open meeting, so if you're interested in the harbors, there's an opportunity to firsthand and witness the discussion that is taking place on a regular basis. So, and just a reminder to staff that when we compile those submissions from committee members, the agenda needs to be sent out last week of this month. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Palm. And a few different events. Of course, I was privileged to lay the wreath on behalf of the city during the Remembrance Day ceremony, and to be up front for that ceremony versus being in the back. And it was a great experience. The weather held up beautifully, and as Councillor Dow mentioned, a large crowd in attendance as well. The week before that, I was able to fill in for the mayor at the Island Coastal Economic Trust's Northern Advisory Committee. And that committee, that fund or that trust has helped a few projects in town recently. Prisma's received some funding from them, and also the Regional Cycling Association for their Mount Mahoney project has received some funds for them as well. So the ICE-T group is doing a great job and distributing funds all across the island for various projects related to tourism or economic development. So it's I've had a chance to go to that meeting the last 2 years in a row now, and it's always been educational and informative. Last week, Councillor Isaacson referred to the meeting she attended with the Sunshine Coast Tourism Strategic Planning. I wasn't able to make the strategic planning, but I was able to attend the AGM after the strategic planning meeting. And one new thing that came out of the AGM is they voted on a change of their bylaws to bring on ex officio members from the local governments to join their board. So similar to Tourism Powell River, Sunshine Coast Tourism will be probably sending a request to the city at some point to have a council liaison and a qathet regional district liaison join their boards as ex officios for next year. So, but things are moving along and lots of activity there from the Sunshine Coast Tourism. And yesterday I attended our library board meeting, and one new thing I just wanted to introduce that if you haven't been to the library this month, you might not have seen, but the library was able to use some funding that they received from the province and invested in a study pod, which you'll see near the front to middle of the library. It is a pod that's available for anyone to book out, no charge, but if you're looking for a place of almost near quietness, it's I think 2 or 4 people can be accommodated in the pod. It can be booked out at the front desk, and it can be a great place for studying or private conversation and things as well. So they've already had some good traction with it in just a few weeks it's been there, but I figured I'd use my opportunity today to promote it a little bit more, so those can go to the library and check it out. So, and that's all I have. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. Is that something like a cone of silence?
I don't know how to say that properly. So, well, it's not a cone, at least. It's a cube. So you'll have to go see. Councillor Elliott.
So I've seen the pod of silent, the silent study pod, and there were people in it talking, so you can definitely not hear them. It looked like a new age, space age thing from the future. So anyway, it was cool.
Yeah, it could be a great place. Even if you had a Zoom call you need to be on, it's a good spot to use. Moving on, we'll move into question period. So do we have any questions from any members of the gallery? Don't all run up at once. Okay, no one online? All righty. Well, we'll give another second. If you are online, you probably see the number on the screen, but it's 1-833-782-7295, and the meeting ID is 710-526-138#. So we'll give another second in case anyone decides to pop in. And I'm surprised with all these people know. And Mr. Glinsky from the Peak is still recovering at home, so we wish him well as he recovers from his injury. But looking at Mr. Tate and seeing no callers coming through. All righty. Can I move on to number 10 and get a motion? Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I move that committee moved into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 90 part 1. I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Second by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Approved. And so I'll move that we reconvene to our closed meeting. We thank everyone for coming out today, and be safe in the weather.